I started the panel, I started the discussion feeling optimistic, and Stephen made me very optimistic. Then I started looking at election returns, and I got less optimistic. Then Rufus made me very depressed. So I'm going to make you even more depressed in the beginning, but hopefully end with a note of optimism. What I'm going to do is I'm going to describe some of the tools and frameworks we have in our next book, titled Dual Transformation. I am going to get you to engage in a couple places. There will be a couple Zeitings polls. The intent of the Zeitings polls are to get you off Twitter. You can't control the election, so pay attention to this discussion. You'll find out what happened anyway. So away we go. I'm going to take you back in time, and Stephen, watch the feet, because I like to wander and I don't want to fall. I'm going to take you back in time to 2007. Remember 2007? The final, or so we thought, Harry Potter book came out in 2007. A young, innocent artist named Miley Cyrus released her second album. Pixar released a movie about a rat cooking that grossed hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide, perhaps justifying Disney paying huge money for the company. If you lived in the Boston area as I did, probably your greatest memory of the year was this one: the Red Sox winning their second World Series in 4 years after an 86-year gap between the last two. My biggest memory of that year was a very disruptive birth. This is my daughter, Holly. She was born in December of that year. She's now 8 years old, still a disruptive force in the Anthony household. In the mobile handset business, there were two other disruptive births. In January of that year, Steve Jobs announced. In June of that year, Apple launched the iPhone. How many of you have an iPhone in the room here? Show of hands. That looks to be about 80% of the room. In November of that year, Google gets together with a bunch of manufacturers, forms the Open Handset Alliance behind the Android operating system. How many Android users in the room here? Not actual Androids, Android users. So we've got the other 20% of the room. Of course, back in 2007, there was a different market leader. It was Nokia. Any Nokia users in the room here? This is only, we got one hand, sir. He used a slide rule, too, a slide rule to go and calculate how to work on your Nokia phone. 2007, in November of that year, Forbes runs this cover: 1 billion customers. Can anyone catch the cell phone king? We know the answer to that question. Yet, it wasn't obvious in 2007. If you were an investor in Nokia, at the end of the year, you were happy. Your stock was up almost 180%. If you invested in this company, Research in Motion, that's its co-CEO there, Jim Balsillie, your stock was up close to 100%. How does this look when change is beginning to happen? Here's a short video clip of Jim Balsillie in April 2008.
Hey, everybody, say hello to Mr. Jim Balsillie. Wow. How is it that you have the same one that I have? Shouldn't you have some fancy James Bond version?
You're living the dream, man.
Is that what that is? It doesn't even have a camera. You don't have the camera one. How's things going?
Things are really good, thanks. Yeah, excellent.
You imagine, all the things that have sort of changed in your life in the last 10 or 15 years.
A lot less has changed than you would think, really. A very normal life, kind of. It's just a whole lot more zeros on everything.
Yeah. Which is great if the decimal point's in the right place, you know. Where RIM has gone in the last, did you have a moment where you thought, okay, I think we've reached, we're here?
Not a lot, really. I don't sort of think that way. I don't sort of look up too much. I don't look down too much. It's the great fun is doing what you do every day. And I'm sort of a poster child for not sort of doing anything but what we do, every day. So, no, I don't really think about it a lot, no.
Do you get the sense that at this point, with what the BlackBerry itself, that device has done for your company, that it's a matter of time before other people, the iPhone didn't really do it. Do you ever look at it and go, what are we going to do if this isn't our primary business, growing RIM beyond something like a BlackBerry?
No. Roughly die. That'll just be it. We're a very poorly diversified portfolio. It's on one thing. It either goes to the moon or it crashes to Earth. So, but it's making it to the moon pretty good. So
sure, totally.
We'll stay with it.
It's hilarious. It either goes to the moon or crashes to Earth. Thank you, Steve. And crash, indeed, it did. Research in Motion renamed BlackBerry. Its stock is down 97% since that video clip ran. The economist Joseph Schumpeter had great language to describe this. He talked about how the essence of capitalism isn't how it administers what exists. It is how it it creates and destroys existing structures. He memorably described the gale of creative destruction. How fiercely is that gale of creative destruction blowing today? Let's do the first Zeitings poll, please. Can we open up the poll on the screen here? The question is, what percent of the companies on the S&P 500 index today, despite all the statistics you heard from Rufus about consolidation and control, will still be on the list in 10 years? Cast your vote here. So what percent will be on the same list in 2026?
I reckon 60 to 80.
Interesting. So I think we'll count this as close enough to continue on. The majority of you say less than 40%. More pessimistic than the research, the longitudinal research that we've done, you can go back to the PowerPoint presentation now, thanks. The longitudinal research that we have done suggests that the turnover in the global S&P 500 over the next 10 years will be about 50%, 50%. This turnover generally is increasing over time, though it goes through cycles, as you could imagine. So what do you as a leader need to do as that gale of creative destruction blows? The answer is both simple and complex. The answer is transformation. Now, when I say that, I mean something specific. Often when we use this word in a business or organizational context, we mean something like this. Kylie Jenner undergoes dramatic transformation as she ditches her dark hair for blonde locks. I am sure this was a really big deal in the Jenner household, but this is not what we are talking about. What we are talking about is the caterpillar to butterfly, the liquid to gas transformation, a fundamental change in form or substance. Let me tell you a story of an organization that transformed, driven by this guy, Clark Gilbert. I met Gilbert in 2001. At the time, he was a professor at the Harvard Business School. His doctoral research was on how large companies should respond to disruptive change. We worked together to advise the US newspaper companies on the results of his research. They ignored us, much to their peril. In 2009, Clark got a tap on the shoulder and was asked to be the CEO of a US newspaper company. You could feel the industry sneer. The academic will learn what life is like in reality. What did Gilbert do? Well, he took the core print publication of his company and he reinvented it. If you picked up this newspaper at the start of the story, you'd see something that looked like anything in the United States. There's sports scores and movie reviews and restaurant reviews and so on. Gilbert said, we can get this information anywhere. So if we're going to print it, we've got to do it at incredibly low cost. We're going to outsource it to somebody else. And the money that we save, we will invest in doing journalism in areas that no one else is doing. The media organization he ran is owned by the Mormon Church, so a natural decision was to focus on issues of faith and family that turn out not just to matter to people who are in that church, but to many people in the United States. By focusing and repositioning the print newspaper, today, this is a growing enterprise and the fastest growing print publication in North America. In parallel to this effort, he created a separate digital group and gave it the charter to come up with new growth businesses, a collection of marketplaces and market spaces that would go in very different directions. For example, Deseret Digital has the largest collection of community sites focused on mothers in the United States. They're doing a different job for their customers. They're serving different advertisers. They're making money in different ways. This is something that is very powerful when you take the transformation that's affecting your business and you split it into two parallel efforts. It's why we call it dual transformation. Transformation A is repositioning today's business. This is Gilbert repositioning his newspaper, or this is Netflix going from sending DVDs through the mail to providing streaming content over the internet, something that's allowed that company to grow substantially. You're still solving the same basic problem for your customers, but you're doing it in a fundamental different way. In parallel, Transformation B is creating a new growth engine. This is Gilbert creating those digital market spaces. This is Amazon.com creating a cloud computing business that today is making $10 billion a year and huge profits for Amazon. There's a C in the equation as well. This is not unrelated diversification. Rather, this is very thoughtful linking of capabilities from the core to enable the new. Taking what my colleague Clayton Christensen famously called the innovator's dilemma and turning it into an opportunity. Gilbert used brands, he used content, he used back-end systems, but he very carefully selected these capabilities. He very strategically managed the link between today and tomorrow, and he very actively arbitrated any and all disputes, generally ruling in favor of his new organization. What was the impact? When Gilbert left in 2015, the business had truly transformed. The core business was smaller, but it was stable and indeed growing. The new growth businesses were now the core of the business. They were growing like crazy, and the overall enterprise, in a market in a free fall, had net income that had grown 30% from the beginning of the story. Here's a couple other examples of dual transformation in action. Janssen is the pharmaceutical arm of Johnson & Johnson, a huge healthcare company. Their transformation A is changing the way that they discover drugs. Historically, it was all their own scientists. They opened the process up, working with scientists at universities and the startup communities, taking a lagging productivity business and making it the most productive R&D development arm in the world. The transformation B is a really radical departure, as you see described here by Bill Haidt, the head of R&D for Janssen, where he is asking, and Janssen is asking, to imagine a world without disease. That is a massively disruptive concept if you make all of your money selling pharmaceutical products to treat and manage disease. But by pushing the organization in new directions and repositioning today, Janssen is now turned into the major engine of growth for Johnson & Johnson. A little closer to my home in Singapore. Imagine going back in time to 2004 and predicting that the legacy postal carrier would increase its revenue by 2.3x over the next decade. People would laugh. Transformation A is taking the postal branches and layering on new services to draw people in even as parcels go down. Transformation B, pictured here, is moving into logistics and e-commerce with a range of services cemented by a major investment by Alibaba, the Chinese online titan. This is dual transformation. I talked about that gale of creative destruction. By metaphor, transformation A is building a great big wall to limit the impact of that gale. Transformation B is building a great big wind turbine to capture, harness, and amplify the energy in it, and the capabilities link gives you the tools and ability to do it. This is really hard. Clark Gilbert, who's a co-author with me on the next book, calls it the hardest problem in leadership today, and he is absolutely right. What do you as a leader need to do? First, you need the courage to choose. Remember, by the time the platform is on fire, your strategic choices are jumping and praying or getting burnt to a crisp. Those are bad options. Mark Bertolini at Aetna demonstrated the courage to choose. He became CEO in 2010. His first year as CEO, the company reported record revenues and earnings. In the middle of this massive growth, he decided to blow the company up. Transformation A is moving from providing insurance to businesses to going direct to consumers. Transformation B is moving from insurance to healthcare IT solutions for providers and hospitals. By getting ahead of a change that Bertolini believes is absolutely inevitable, he's positioned his company for long-term growth. The clarity to focus. This is not hundreds or thousands of flowers that diffuses energy and leads to a lot of trampled flowers. Instead, it's like John F. Kennedy pronouncing in the early 1960s that we're going to send a man to the moon and bring him back by the end of the decade. Having the clarity to focus on a select few strategic opportunity areas that allow you to go and create the future. You've got the clarity both to decide what you're going to do and, even more importantly, what you're not going to do. The curiosity to explore. The only thing I can promise when you go and do new things is that success doesn't come from following a straight line. There's going to be false steps, there's going to be fumbles, there's going to be mistakes, there might even be failure. You need the curiosity to explore if you're going to hope to succeed. How do you do that in a large enterprise? Here's at least one tip. Tata Sons is the largest conglomerate in India. You see a team here winning a prize called Dare to Try. As the name connotes, the prize goes to a team that failed but learned something during the process. This is a big deal. More than 300 teams applied for this in 2015. As a leader, you have to demonstrate curiosity as well. When was the last time, you should ask, I did something for the first time? Finally, you need the conviction to persevere. This is really tough. I can guarantee that you will face crises. You will have a crisis of commitment. Are you serious about it? You will have a crisis of conflict between today and tomorrow. You will even have a crisis of identity. Who are we? Who are we becoming? If there is not a motivating purpose behind what you're doing, pictured here is the J&J credo. It starts with the patient. It goes to their families. It goes to the employees. It goes to the communities before describing earning a fair return for shareholders. If you're starting with maximizing shareholder returns, I guarantee when the crisis comes, you will crumble. There has to be a purpose, and it has to be human behind what you're doing. So one last Eatings question, then I'll give you a final thought to close it out. Of the 4 characteristics I described here, if we can open up that other question, the courage, the clarity, the curiosity, and conviction, what do you view as being in shortest supply in Australia right now? Combination of the bookends, the courage to choose and the conviction to persevere, with the curiosity to explore curiously going up and up as the polls go on. All right, can we go back to the PowerPoints? And I will leave you. This is hard stuff. These are words from leaders who have gone through the journey. Mark Bertolini from Aetna, Mark Fields from Ford, Helen Eden, who runs a not-for-profit in the United States, Ferds de la Cruz, who runs a water utility business in the Philippines. Everyone has different words for it, but they all will agree this is incredibly hard. It is indeed the greatest challenge that a leader will ever face. My view, as channeled by my bobblehead Skoda, my head on the body of Yoda, different story for a different time, is this is the greatest opportunity that you will ever see. When those gales of creative destruction blow, when disruption comes, it is the moment. It is the moment when laggards become leaders. It is the moment where legends are created. It is the moment when legacies are left. And this is all in our control. Archimedes once said something along the lines of, you give me a lever long enough and a platform on which to place it, and I will move the world. I've spent enough time in this country and interacting with all of you to know the platform is there. The capabilities of your collective organizations are awesome. The lever is there too. The answers are there too. It now comes down to you making the choice to go and drive the change. Thank you very much and good luck.